Lisa Martinez rubbed her tired eyes and looked at the clock on her desk. 3 in the morning on Titan Station meant another 6 hours before her shift ended. A deep space communications array hummed quietly around her. Its massive dishes pointed toward the dark space between galaxies. Most nights, she heard nothing but cosmic background noise and the occasional message from Earth colonies. Tonight was different. Soft beep from her console made Lisa sit up straight. The computer screen showed an incoming signal, but the readings made no sense. The transmission was coming from outside their galaxy, farther than any human signal had ever traveled. Lisa checked her equipment twice, thinking something must be broken. The signal was real. Lisa pressed the emergency button that would wake up Jake Coleman, the station's language expert. Jake lived in the next building over, and Lisa knew he would not be happy about getting called at this hour. But this signal was unlike anything she had ever seen. 15 minutes later, Jake walked into the communications room wearing his old college shirt and looking annoyed. His dark hair stuck up in all directions, and he carried a large cup of coffee. "This better be important, Lisa," Jake said. "I was having a good dream about being on a beach somewhere warm." Lisa pointed at her screen. "Look at this. The computer says this signal came from the Andromeda Galaxy. That's over 2 million light years away." Jake set down his coffee and stared at the data. His annoyed expression changed to surprise, then excitement. "That's impossible. No one has technology that can send signals that far." "That's what I thought too," Lisa said. "But the computer checked everything 3 times. The signal is real, and it's coming from Andromeda." Jake sat down at the analysis station and started working. He fed the signal into the translation computers and began looking for patterns. The data was complex, with layers of information woven together in ways that human science barely understood. Hours passed as Jake worked on the signal. Lisa brought him more coffee and watched as he slowly pulled meaning from the strange transmission. The computers helped, but Jake's experience with alien languages made the real difference as the sun rose over Titan's frozen surface. Jake finally looked up from his work. His face was pale, and his hands shook slightly. "Lisa, you need to call Admiral Stevens on Earth right now," Jake said quietly. "What did you find?" Lisa asked. Jake turned his screen so Lisa could see the translation. The words made her stomach feel cold. "It's a distress call," Jake explained, "from a species called the Kolari. They live on a world called Thessara Prime, in the Andromeda Galaxy. They're being attacked by something called the Vorthic Empire." Lisa read the translated message on the screen. The Kolari described themselves as peaceful beings made of living crystal who had never fought a war. They used energy in ways humans could barely imagine, powering their entire civilization without harming their planet. But the Vorthic Empire had found them. According to the message, the Vorthic were part machine and part living creature. They traveled from galaxy to galaxy, consuming entire worlds and turning the people they captured into slaves. The Kolari had watched the Vorthic destroy dozens of other species in their galaxy over the past few years. Now it was their turn. "They say they have maybe 6 months before the Vorthic finish them off," Jake continued. "They sent this message out randomly, hoping someone somewhere might hear it and help them." The message included detailed information about Kolari technology and star charts showing their location. Lisa could see that the Kolari were desperate, but still thinking clearly. They had sent everything they could to help any potential rescuers find them. Lisa placed the emergency call to Admiral Carol Stevens at Seoul Defense Command on Earth. The connection took several minutes to establish, and when Admiral Stevens appeared on the screen, she looked like she had just woken up. "This better be important," Admiral Stevens said. "I was supposed to have the morning off." "Admiral, we've received a distress call from the Andromeda Galaxy," Lisa said. "It's from an alien species asking for help." Admiral Stevens was quiet for a long moment. Then she leaned forward in her chair. "Send me everything you have. I'll be there in 12 hours. The next several hours passed quickly. Jake continued working on the translation, finding more details in the Kalari message. The aliens had included information about their attackers that made Lisa feel sick to her stomach. The Vorthik Empire had been consuming galaxies for over a million years. They turned entire planets into raw materials and converted captured populations into part of their collective mind. Billions of beings across dozens of galaxies had been destroyed or enslaved. The Kalari message also included something else that caught Jake's attention. Hidden in their energy manipulation techniques were theoretical principles that human scientists had been trying to understand for decades. The Kalari were offering their most advanced knowledge to anyone who would help them. When Admiral Stevens arrived at Titan Station, she looked grim. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. Lisa had heard stories about Admiral Stevens fighting in the colony wars, but seeing her in person was different. Admiral Stevens read through Jake's complete translation twice before speaking. "How reliable is this translation?" "Very reliable," Jake answered. The Kalari used mathematical principles to make sure their message would be understood by any technological species. They were very careful about accuracy. Admiral Stevens stared out the window at the stars for several minutes. Finally, she turned back to Lisa and Jake. "Do you two understand what this means?" Admiral Stevens asked. "If this message is real, we're looking at the longest military mission in human history. And if we ignore it, we might be next." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. She had not thought about that possibility. If the Vorthik Empire was really consuming entire galaxies, Earth's galaxy could be next on their list. What do we do? Lisa asked. Admiral Stevens picked up the data pad containing the Kalari message. "We take this to the President and the Coalition Council. Then we let them decide if humanity is ready to fight a war in another galaxy." As Admiral Stevens left Titan Station, Lisa looked back at her console, where the Kalari message continued to repeat. Somewhere across the vast emptiness between galaxies, an entire species was counting down their final days, hoping someone would hear their cry for help. Lisa wondered if humanity would answer that cry with ships and soldiers, or if the Kalari would die alone while humans debated and hesitated. Either way, she knew that this message had changed everything. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and the universe was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. President Amy Richardson stood at the head of the long table in the emergency council room. The best minds in human space sat around her, all looking tired from being called to Earth on short notice. Outside the windows, the blue planet turned slowly, peaceful, and quiet. None of them knew if it would stay that way. Admiral Stevens had arrived just 6 hours ago with the Kalari message. Now everyone who mattered in human government was trying to decide what to do about it. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," said Senator Frank Davis, a thin man who always asked too many questions. "Aliens from another galaxy are asking us to fight a war against other aliens who have been eating entire galaxies for 1,000,000 years?" "That's right," Admiral Stevens answered. "The Kalari are facing complete destruction. The Vorthik Empire has already consumed most of Andromeda. If they finish there, they might look for new galaxies to attack." General Ryan Blackwood, a large man with scars on his hands from the colony wars, stood up from his chair. "With respect, Senator Davis, this isn't complicated. Someone asked for help. We either help them or we don't." "It's not that simple," argued Dr. Helen Parks, the head of Colonial Affairs. "We're talking about sending our best ships and soldiers to another galaxy. What if we need them here? What if this is a trap?" General Blackwood walked to the large screen showing a map of known space. "Look at this," he said, pointing at the display. Humanity controls maybe a quarter of our galaxy. We've spent 300 years fighting each other and slowly expanding. Now we find out there's something out there that eats entire galaxies. He turned back to face the room. The way I see it, we have two choices. We can sit here and hope the Vorthok never notice us, or we can hit them while they're busy somewhere else. President Richardson had been quiet during the argument, but now she looked at Dr. Kate Morrison, who ran the military's Advanced Technology Division. Kate, what would it take to actually reach Andromeda? Dr. Morrison pulled up her own display, showing complex equations and ship designs. We've been working on quantum tunnel drives for 15 years. The theory says they could move ships across intergalactic distances, but we've never had enough power to test them properly. She highlighted sections of the Kalari message. The interesting thing is that the Kalari included detailed information about energy manipulation. Their techniques could make our quantum drives actually work. So you're saying the people asking for help have also given us the tools to reach them? Asked President Richardson. Exactly, Dr. Morrison replied. It's like they knew whoever received their message would need better technology to help them. Captain Ben Torres, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, finally spoke up. Ma'am, if I may say something? President Richardson nodded. Torres was known as one of the best Marine commanders in human space, and his opinion mattered. I've fought in a lot of battles, Torres said. I've seen what happens when good people do nothing while bad people hurt others. The way I figure it, if we can help and we don't, that makes us partly responsible for what happens next. Senator Davis shook his head. Captain, we have responsibilities to our own people first. We can't save everyone in the universe. Maybe not, Torres replied, but we can try to save someone. And if these Vorthok are really as bad as the message says, they'll come for us eventually anyway. Better to fight them while they're far away than wait for them to show up here. The room fell silent as everyone thought about Torres's words. President Richardson walked to the windows and looked out at Earth. Finally, she turned back to the group. Kate, how long would it take to build ships capable of making this journey? Dr. Morrison checked her notes. If we modify our newest battleships with quantum drives and use Kalari energy techniques, maybe 3 months. We'd need to build some new systems from scratch. What about crew? Asked General Blackwood. 15,000 would be enough for a proper battle fleet, Admiral Stevens answered. 3 ships, a battleship, and 2 carriers for fighter support. President Richardson made her decision. We're going to help them. Admiral Stevens, I want you to prepare a mission plan. General Blackwood, start selecting volunteers. Dr. Morrison, begin building those ships immediately. Senator Davis stood up angrily. Madam President, you can't make this decision alone. Congress needs to vote on this. Senator, there's no time for long debates, President Richardson replied firmly. The Kalari have maybe 6 months left. By the time Congress finishes arguing, they'll be dead. Over the next 3 months, human space became busier than it had ever been. The shipyards around Mars worked day and night building the 3 ships for what everyone called Operation Starfire. The UES Retribution would be the main battleship, while the UES Liberty and UES Defiant would carry fighters and support equipment. Commander Megan Walsh worked 18 hours a day combining human military technology with Kalari energy science. The results amazed everyone. Human plasma cannons became powerful enough to destroy moon-sized targets. Shield systems could now protect ships against attacks that would have destroyed entire fleets before. Meanwhile, Captain Torres trained the 15,000 volunteers who would make the journey. Men and women from every human colony wanted to join the mission. Torres had to turn away 5 people for everyone he accepted. Dr. Morrison solved the quantum drive problem just in time. The new systems could create tunnels through space itself, allowing ships to travel between galaxies in months instead of millions of years. The only problem was that no one knew exactly what the journey would do to the people making it. On launch day, President Richardson came to the Mars shipyards to see the fleet off. The 3 ships hung in space like metal mountains, bristling, with weapons and filled with humanity's best soldiers and scientists. Remember, President Richardson told Admiral Stevens over the communication link, "You're not just representing Earth. You're representing the idea that someone should help when others call for aid." Admiral Stevens looked at the display showing the route to Andromeda. "We'll bring them home, Madam President, all of them." As the 3 ships activated their quantum drives and disappeared into folded space, people across human space watched the news reports and wondered what would happen next. For the first time in human history, Earth's children were traveling to another galaxy to fight in someone else's war. Nobody knew if they would ever come home. The journey through quantum space would take 8 months if everything went right. But as the ships vanished into the strange realm between dimensions, everyone understood that humanity had just made the biggest gamble in its history. They were betting everything on the hope that doing the right thing would somehow be enough. The quantum tunnel felt like being inside a nightmare that never ended. Chief Engineer Dan Cooper stood in the engine room of the UES Retribution, watching displays that showed impossible readings. The ship existed in several dimensions at once, and the quantum drive screamed with energy that barely stayed under control. "Stability holding at 60%, reported Lieutenant Amy Clark from her station. Her voice shook despite her training. Everyone on the ship had been affected by the journey through quantum space. Cooper wiped sweat from his forehead and checked the drive systems again. They had been traveling through the quantum tunnel for 4 months, and the equipment was beginning to show strain. Worse, the crew was starting to show strain too. Yesterday, 3 sailors had reported seeing their dead relatives walking through the ship. Last week, Lieutenant Sam Miller from Fighter Squadron had claimed he was receiving messages from the Kalari through his dreams. The ship's doctor said it was quantum displacement affecting their brains, but Cooper worried it was something worse. "Chief, we're getting fluctuations in Tunnel 7, called Ensign Mark Davis from across the room. A containment field is starting to wobble." Cooper rushed to the control panel and started making adjustments. If any of the quantum tunnels collapsed while they were inside it, the entire fleet would be scattered across space and time. They might end up in the past, the future, or somewhere that didn't exist at all. "Hold steady," Cooper told his team. "Just 4 more months, and we'll be through this." On the bridge, Admiral Stevens watched the navigation displays and tried not to think about what the journey was doing to her people. The quantum tunnel showed as a swirling mass of colors that hurt to look at directly. Sometimes, she thought, she could see other ships in the tunnel, vessels from different times or different realities, traveling their own impossible journeys. "Admiral, I'm receiving another transmission from Lieutenant Miller," reported Communications Officer Jill Hayes. "He says the Kalari are trying to contact us through quantum space." Stevens walked over to Miller's station. The young pilot looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and hands that shook slightly. But his reports had been consistent for weeks, and Stevens was starting to believe them. "What are they telling you, Lieutenant?" Stevens asked. Miller closed his eyes and concentrated. "They're scared, Admiral. The Vorthik have taken their home world. Most of their people are dead or captured. The survivors are hiding somewhere, but I can't tell where." Stevens felt her stomach tighten. They had hoped to arrive in time to help defend the Sara Prime. If the planet had already fallen, their mission might be pointless. "Is there anything else?" Stevens asked. Miller nodded slowly. "They're warning us about something. The Vorthik know we're coming. They've detected our quantum tunnel signatures." On the Hughes Liberty, Dr. Alex Wright studied the data they had received. about the Vorthic Empire. What he found made him wish he had stayed on Earth. The Vorthic had consumed at least 14 galaxies over the past million years. Each galaxy contained billions of stars and trillions of living beings. The numbers were so large that Wright's mind could barely process them. The Vorthic Empire was not just an alien invasion force. They were a cosmic disaster that had been growing for longer than human civilization had existed. Wright's research also revealed something terrifying about Vorthic methods. They didn't just kill the species they conquered. They converted captured beings into part of their collective consciousness, adding their knowledge and abilities to the Empire's growing power. Every galaxy the Vorthic consumed made them stronger and smarter. By now, they possessed the combined knowledge of thousands of different species across millions of years. "Doctor, you need to see this," called his assistant, Ensign Julia Reed. She had been analyzing the quantum displacement readings from their journey. Wright looked at Reed's display and felt cold. "Are you sure about this data?" "I've checked it 6 times, Reed replied. "The quantum tunnels we're using create signatures that can be detected across vast distances. If the Vorthic have the right equipment, they've known about our journey since we started." Wright realized they were not just traveling to a rescue mission. They were traveling into a trap. After 6 months of traveling through quantum space, the human fleet finally began to emerge near the Andromeda Galaxy. The transition from quantum tunnel to normal space was violent, with the ships shaking and systems overloading from the stress. Lieutenant Miller was the first to see the Sara Prime on the long-range sensors. What he saw made him sick. The planet that had once been home to billions of Kolari was now a dark, scarred world covered with Vorthic factories. Massive ships moved in orbit, stripping away the planet's atmosphere and mining its core for raw materials. "Admiral, the Sara Prime has fallen," Miller reported quietly. "The planet is being consumed." Admiral Stevens stared at the tactical display, showing the dead world. They had traveled across the space between galaxies, risked everything, and arrived too late. "Keep scanning," Stevens ordered. "If there are any survivors, we'll find them." For 3 days, the human fleet searched the Sara system. They found the wreckage of Kolari ships, the remains of orbital cities, and the cold bodies of dead worlds. It looked like the Vorthic had won completely. Then Officer Hayes detected something unusual. "Admiral, I'm picking up very faint energy signatures from the asteroid belt. They're so weak I almost missed them." Captain Tony Rodriguez volunteered to take a small ship to investigate. He flew carefully through the asteroid field, scanning each rock for signs of life. Most were empty, but the 7th asteroid he checked gave off readings that made his sensors go crazy. "Admiral, I've found them," Rodriguez reported over the radio. "There's a hollow space inside this asteroid, and it's full of life signs." Rodriguez docked his ship with a hidden airlock built into the asteroid's surface. Inside, he found a tunnel that led deep into the rock. The tunnel glowed with soft blue light that felt warm and welcoming dot at the center of the asteroid. Rodriguez discovered a vast chamber filled with thousands of Kolari. The aliens looked like living crystals that moved and changed shape as they communicated through patterns of light. One of the larger Kolari approached Rodriguez, and words formed in his mind without sound. "You came," the alien said. "We are Elder Nethys. We did not believe anyone would hear our call." Rodriguez activated his translator so Admiral Stevens could hear the conversation. "We're here to help. How many of you survived?" "Perhaps 3,000 across 7 hidden colonies," Elder Nethys replied. "Most of our people are gone. The Vorthic convert some into servants and consume the rest for energy. We're going to get you out of here," Rodriguez promised. Elder Nethys glowed brighter, and Rodriguez felt sadness flowing from the alien. "You do not understand the danger you face. The Vorthik Harvester fleet numbers over 200,000 ships. They have consumed our entire galaxy and are preparing to move to the next. The alien paused, and Rodriguez felt fear mixed with the sadness. They detected your quantum tunnels when you arrived. They know about your galaxy now. Even if you rescue us, they will follow you home. Rodriguez felt his blood turn cold. Humanity had come to save the Kolari, but instead they had led the Vorthik Empire straight to Earth. Admiral Stevens stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution and stared at the tactical display. The Vorthik Harvester fleet spread across the Thesara system like a disease, with over 200,000 ships stripping resources from dead worlds. Any sane military commander would order an immediate retreat. Stevens was not feeling sane. Communications. Open a channel to all ships, Stevens ordered. This is Admiral Stevens to all human forces. We came here to rescue the Kolari, but the situation has changed. She paused and looked around the bridge at her officers. Every face showed the same mixture of fear and determination. The Vorthik Empire now knows about Earth. If we run home, they'll follow us and consume our galaxy too. So we're not running. We're going to destroy every Vorthik ship in Andromeda. Captain Ben Torres, who had been preparing his Marines for evacuation duty, stopped what he was doing and smiled. Admiral, with respect, that's the craziest order I've ever received. I love it. Commander Megan Walsh immediately began working with the Kolari survivors to integrate their energy technology with human weapon systems. Elder Nethys helped by sharing detailed information about Vorthik ship designs and weaknesses. The Vorthik rely on their numbers and collective intelligence. Elder Nethys explained through translated light patterns. They have never faced an ninja, enemy that fights with pure aggression. They calculate losses and withdraw when efficiency drops. But humans do not calculate the same way. Dr. Kate Morrison, working from the U's Liberty, made a breakthrough that changed everything. Admiral, I've figured out how to weaponize our quantum drives. If we create controlled tunnel collapses near enemy ships, we can tear them apart at the molecular level. How many ships can we hit at once? Stevens asked. With the Kolari energy techniques, maybe 100 ships per collapse, Morrison replied. But it'll damage our drives each time we do it. Stevens nodded grimly. Better to break our ships winning than keep them intact while losing. The Battle of the Thesara Nebula began when Lieutenant Sam Miller led his fighter squadron against a Vorthik patrol group. Miller had been changed by his journey through quantum space, and now he could somehow predict enemy movements before they happened. Ghostwing, follow my lead, Miller radioed to his pilots. I can see what they're going to do before they do. Miller's fighters moved through the Vorthik formation, like they were dancing to music only they could hear. His squadron destroyed 50 enemy ships without losing a single pilot. The Vorthik had never seen anything like it. Captain Torres led the first Marine assault on a Vorthik command ship. His soldiers fought with a ferocity that confused the enemy. When Torres ran out of ammunition, he used his rifle as a club. When that broke, he used his bare hands. These humans fight like they want to die, one captured Vorthik transmission said. They use their ships as weapons when their guns fail. They continue attacking even when victory is impossible. The tide of battle turned when Chief Engineer Dan Cooper discovered something important about the Vorthik fleet. Admiral, they're all connected through quantum communication networks. If we can overload their system with quantum static, we can blind their entire fleet at once. Stevens authorized the plan immediately. Do it, Chief. Blind them all. Cooper and his team created a massive quantum static burst using modified drive systems from all 3 human ships. The burst spread through the Vorthik communication network like a virus, overloading every connected ship simultaneously. Suddenly, 200,000 Vorthic ships found themselves cut off from their collective intelligence. Individual ships began making mistakes, firing on each other, and flying into asteroids. The perfect coordination that had made them unstoppable was gone. Commander Walsh took advantage of the chaos to test the weaponized quantum drives. She targeted a cluster of Vorthic dreadnoughts and opened a quantum tunnel collapse right in the middle of their formation. The results were spectacular. Space itself seemed to tear open, and everything within 1,000 kilometers was pulled apart atom by atom. 50 of the largest Vorthic ships simply ceased to exist. Target the next group, Stevens ordered. Keep hitting them while they're blind. The human fleet moved through the Vorthic formation like a pack of wolves hunting sheep. Human ships were smaller and fewer, but they fought with a coordination and aggression that the Vorthic could not match. Captain Nick Foster of the U.S. Defiant made the ultimate sacrifice when his carrier was surrounded by Vorthic cruisers. Instead of surrendering, Foster aimed his ship at the largest enemy vessel and activated maximum thrust. "This is Captain Foster to all ships," he radioed calmly. "Tell my family I went down fighting." The U.S. Defiant smashed through the Vorthic cruiser's reactor core at full speed, creating an explosion that destroyed 17 enemy ships. Foster and his crew died, but their sacrifice cleared the way for the final assault. Lieutenant Miller, now leading the combined human fighter wings, discovered the location of the Vorthic command complex hidden in a massive asteroid. "Admiral, I can sense their leaders in there. They're trying to re-establish communications with their fleet." Stevens made her final decision. "All ships converge on that asteroid. We end this now." The assault on the Vorthic command complex became the most vicious fighting of the war. Human Marines fought their way through corridors filled with enemy soldiers, using explosives and flamethrowers to clear each room. Torres led the final charge into the command center, where the Vorthic leaders tried to surrender. "We yield," the alien commander said through a translation device. "We offer terms for withdrawal." Torres looked at the creature that had ordered the destruction of entire galaxies. No terms, no withdrawal, no mercy. The human forces destroyed the command complex completely, killing every Vorthic leader in Andromeda. Without central coordination, the remaining enemy ships began fleeing in all directions. Elder Nethys watched the battle from the safety of the asteroid colony and later described it to other survivors. "The humans did not fight like any species we have known. They fought like fire given form, burning across the void with pure purpose." When the battle ended, the Visara system was quiet for the first time in months. The Vorthic harvester fleet had been completely destroyed. Over 200,000 enemy ships had been reduced to wreckage floating in space, but the cost had been enormous. Of the 15,000 humans who had made the journey to Andromeda, fewer than 8,000 survived. The U.S. retribution was held together by emergency repairs and determination. The U.S. Liberty had lost half her fighter squadrons. "Admiral." Stevens stood on her damaged bridge and looked at the field of debris that had once been the most powerful invasion fleet in the universe. Around her, exhausted crew members began the work of rescue and recovery. "Communications, send a message to the surviving Kaleri colonies," Stevens ordered. "Tell them Andromeda is free." As reports came in from across the galaxy, Stevens realized they had accomplished something impossible. Not only had they rescued the Kaleri, they had liberated an entire galaxy from a million-year-old empire. But Elder Nethys had been right about one thing. The Vorthic Empire was vast, spanning dozens of galaxies across the universe. Destroying the Andromeda fleet had been just the beginning. The real war was yet to come. 3 weeks after the battle, Admiral Stevens received her first surprise visitors. The long-range sensors picked up ships approaching from different parts of Andromeda, but these vessels were not Vorphic. They moved cautiously, sending peaceful signals on frequencies the Kalari had taught the humans to recognize. Lieutenant Sam Miller, who had become even more sensitive to alien thoughts after the battle, was the first to understand what was happening. "Admiral, these are other species that survived the Vorphic invasion. They've been hiding, and now they're coming out." The first ship to arrive belonged to the Winzingers, a species of gaseous beings who lived in the atmospheres of gas giant planets. Their representative, a swirling cloud of silver and blue gases, spoke through vibrations in the air. "We have watched your battle from our hidden worlds," the Winzinger said. "For 300 years, we have lived in fear of the Vorphic. You have done what we believed impossible." Over the next few days, more species emerged from hiding. The architects were crystalline beings who built cities in space, while the consortium consisted of plant-like creatures who had learned to live in the empty regions between stars. Each species had survived by hiding and running, never believing they could fight back. Elder Nethys served as translator during the first meetings. "Each of these species has knowledge that could help rebuild our galaxy," the Kalari leader explained. "The Winzingers understand atmospheric engineering. The architects know how to build in space without planets. The consortium can grow food anywhere." Admiral Stevens looked around the room at the representatives of different species and made a decision that would change the universe. "We're not just going to rebuild Andromeda. We're going to make sure this never happens again anywhere." Dr. Alex Wright had been studying captured Vorphic data during the weeks after the battle. What he found made him request an immediate meeting with Admiral Stevens. "Admiral, the Vorphic Empire is even larger than we thought," Wright reported. "They've been expanding across the universe for millions of years. Andromeda was just one target among thousands. There are Vorphic fleets in dozens of other galaxies right now." Stevens felt tired just thinking about the scope of the problem. "How many people are we talking about?" "Trillions, Admiral." "Maybe more. Every galaxy has species like the Kalari calling for help right now. The difference is that no one else has ever answered. The solution came from an unexpected source." Lieutenant Miller had been experiencing strange changes since the battle. The quantum exposure during their journey, combined with his psychic connection to the Kalari, had altered him in ways that human science could barely understand. "I can move through quantum space without a ship now," Miller explained to Dr. Morrison. "I can step into a quantum tunnel and come out anywhere in the universe. The Kalari call it becoming a voidwalker." Morrison ran tests on Miller and discovered that he could indeed travel instantly across galactic distances. More importantly, he could carry messages and small objects with him. "This changes everything," Stevens realized. "If we can train more voidwalkers, we can establish instant communication across the universe. We can coordinate defense efforts in multiple galaxies at once." The construction of New Thesara began 6 months after the battle. The joint human-Kalari city was built in orbit around the dead planet, serving as the capital of what everyone was calling the Intergalactic Defense Alliance. Commander Walsh oversaw the integration of technologies from all the allied species. The results amazed everyone involved. Human weapons powered by Kalari energy, Winzinger atmospheric shields, architect construction techniques, and consortium biological systems created defenses that were stronger than anything the Vorphic had. Faced, the Kalari created a special memorial for all the beings lost in the war. Elder Nethys grew a massive crystal that contained the quantum echoes of every human and Kalari who had died fighting the Vorphic. The crystal became the centerpiece of New Thesara, glowing with soft light that could be seen from anywhere in the city. Captain Torres, who had been promoted to general after the battle, established the first human colony in Andromeda. "We're not visitors here anymore," he told his soldiers. "This is our second home. We stay here to make sure the Vorthik never come back. The most important development came when Miller made contact with other galaxies. Using his Voidwalker abilities, he discovered that distress calls similar to the Kalari message were being sent from at least 12 other galaxies. They're all facing the same thing, Miller reported after returning from a scouting mission. Vorthik fleets consuming everything in their path. Some species are already extinct. Others are down to their last few worlds. President Richardson, receiving reports from Andromeda, made the decision that would define humanity's future. We're going to answer every call for help we can reach. Admiral Stevens, I'm authorizing the construction of the largest fleet in human history. The shipyards around New Thesara began building the UES Vengeance, a ship the size of a small moon designed specifically for intergalactic warfare. Unlike previous human ships, the Vengeance was built using technologies from all Alliance species. It could carry 50,000 soldiers and had weapons powerful enough to destroy entire enemy fleets. Dr. Morrison worked with Kalari scientists to develop new quantum drives that could create permanent tunnels between galaxies. We're building a network, she explained to Admiral Stevens. Instant travel between Alliance worlds anywhere in the universe. As the first year in Andromeda ended, humanity had transformed from a single-species civilization to the leaders of an intergalactic alliance. The quiet species that had received a distress call was now actively hunting for other species in danger. Lieutenant Miller, now Colonel Miller and leader of the Voidwalker Corps, established contact with the first species. In a distant galaxy, their message was familiar. Another peaceful civilization facing destruction by the Vorthik Empire. This is Colonel Miller of the Intergalactic Defense Alliance. He transmitted across the cosmic void. We received your distress call. Help is coming. Jake Coleman, back on Earth, worked on expanding the communication network that had started. With the Kalari message, he now coordinated distress calls from across the universe, making sure no cry for help went unanswered. We've become something we never planned to be, Admiral Stevens said during a conference with Alliance leaders. We're the immune system the universe never had. Elder Nethys, now serving as the Alliance ambassador, added his own thoughts. Humanity heard our call when we faced extinction. Now you answer every call across the cosmos. You have become the fire that burns away the darkness. As reports came in of new Vorthik fleets in other galaxies, Admiral Stevens looked out at the growing Alliance fleet around New Thesara. Ships from dozens of species floated together in space, all united by the simple idea that someone should help when others called for aid. The UES Vengeance was nearly complete, and 3 more ships of the same class were under construction. Soon, humanity would take the war directly to the Vorthik Empire's home territories. But for now, Stevens was content to watch the stars of Andromeda and know that an entire galaxy was free because humanity had chosen to answer a call for help. Whatever came next, the universe was no longer empty of hope. The cry for deliverance had been answered with fire, and that fire would burn across the cosmos until every species was free to live in peace.